Okay, we're going to get started here. Allow a minute for everyone in the hallway to enter. Great, well, thank you. I hope you all enjoyed that orange cheesecake as much as I did. But we're about to get started with our next talk. And the team will present about this, but the focus will be on mechanical collection of mulch and recycling efforts. One of the things that I'll just briefly mention is, as many of you know, the team has been working together, and so this is a strong interest for California, but also from our background. My name is Jazmine Mejia-Muñoz, and I'm with the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuaries and the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and so we're excited to be hearing about all this work that our collaborators are doing. We'll start this presentation with a presentation from James duBois, 4 years of strawberry mulch recycling successes and challenges. James is the Senior Manager in Environmental Sustainability at Driscoll's of the Americas, and he has worked with Driscoll's enterprise for over 10 years in both US and Mexico. His main focus areas have included water stewardship and environmental risk management, including efforts to reduce the impacts of field plastics and the production of fresh berries, and he works a network of independent growers to measure and improve water and input use management, including field plastics. In the room, we also have Kyle Momper, who has also worked really closely with us, so thank you. And we'll pass it on to you.
All right, hello everybody. Great to be here with you. Great to be here with the collaborators on this project as well. So I'm James duBois with Driscoll's. I'm going to describe to you the background and the problem that we faced, and an overview of the solution that we developed along with the collaborators, Andros and Flipping Iron, up here on stage. So you may ask yourselves, why is Driscoll's at a plastic recycling conference, right? It might seem like an odd fit, but it's really quite an appropriate fit. So Driscoll's is a genetics-based berry marketer, right? So what does that mean? It means that we work with independent growers that will take our plants that we grow in a nursery, and they will plant them in the field, and they will grow fruit for us, which they'll turn in, and we will sell. So we work with these independent growers all over the world. I mostly focus my efforts in the California, Mexico, Florida. We have some operations in Canada as well. So I'm in the Americas business unit. I have a couple other colleagues in the room I wanted to mention as well. We have Renee and Jesus Antonio, if you guys want to raise your hand. They're here from Driscoll's from the Baja district in Mexico. And then there are other berry marketers in the room as well. And I think that's really important. I mean, we're starting to take this problem. We're not starting to. This has been a significant challenge for us for a long time, what to do with field plastics. And you're seeing it in terms of our attendance and other folks from the berry industry in the room. So our growers have a lot of different field plastic applications, right? I want to go through those real quickly. I know for most of you, this is sort of old hat, but I think it's important it provides some context as to what we're focused on. First of all, I mean, field plastics allow us to do what we do, which is providing fresh berries year-round. Without the use of field plastics, it just wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't have this continuity of supply that our consumers enjoy. There would not be as much winter production. And so I'll start from the upper left. We have tunnel film. So those are Spanish high tunnels. Some of you may have known them by. Tunnel film we generate a lot of. It's the plastic which we generate the most of. It is also the most widely recycled. So high generation rates, but really high recycling rates. Next down on the picture, we have bed mulch. We're going to be talking about that a lot today. We generate a lot of it. It's really important. It's critical in strawberry production. It provides a season extension, earliness, improves quality, improves yield, does all kinds of good stuff for us. We have to have it. But We generate a lot of it. It is difficult to recycle. It's, as you can see, it has soil contact or ground contact, as many people refer to it. It has plant contact. It degrades through the season. Real focus area for us. We have fume plastic in the middle top, fumigation plastic. We don't generate as much of it because we don't fumigate every acre which we grow or which our growers grow. But it also has that soil contact aspect and has been difficult to recycle in the past. We generate lots of other types of plastic, which I'll mention briefly here. There's containers in some of our raspberry, blackberry, blueberry growing. It's a soilless media container growing system. We have weed mat, we have drip stakes and emitters, we have gutter systems to collect drain that comes out the bottom of those plants. Lots of, we generate a lot of different types of plastic. Okay, and so why are end-of-life solutions, why are field plastic impacts, why is that a Driscoll's initiative? Why does Driscoll's care about that? I'll focus on a couple here. So specifically in California, which is the region which we'll be zooming into quite a bit, our growers generally dispose of everything in a landfill, right? If it's not recycled, it goes to a landfill. However, those tipping fees are increasing, impacting the economics of the post-harvest cycle. And we see in some areas those tipping fees are increasing pretty significantly. In other geographies, such as some areas of Mexico, there are not adequate disposal facilities. So, the types of landfills that we're used to seeing kind of in the bottom left, they just don't exist. So, luckily, there has been some recycling of those soil contact plastics, but it's not 100%, and it's actually gone backwards in some instances. So, what happens? That plastic, it accumulates. Disposal is very difficult. It accumulates in sort of this haphazard fashion, as you see on the screen here, or it accumulates in a grower's yard, or there's a centralized location. But what's happening is it's largely accumulating, and when it accumulates and sits, it leaks, it blows around. It's not good, right? And the communities in which we operate, they are impacted by this. So. This is really a community-derived environmental initiative. It's really, our consumers, our people that eat berries, our customers, the retailers that sell those berries, they are not really asking about this. What's much more of a concern for them is our packaging. However, we're very focused on this initiative. I'd say as much as or more than everything else. And so, so even though the consumers and the customers aren't asking about our field plastics, about the plastics used to grow berries, there is an increasing visibility and interest, right? And you'll see that a couple examples of it here. There's some FAO publications that have come out over the last few years. There's some plastic residue in soil studies. I believe that was part of the discussion yesterday. And there was a recent Atlantic Monthly article. It was one of the first times I'd seen it in the mainstream sort of media. That was just a few months ago, I believe. I'd recommend that those of you that haven't seen it, that you look it up. And there's also, so that's all sort of those are through the lens of concern. There has been some, positive media attention as well. The grant associated with this project is in the lower left, which was a federal grant administered by California Marine Sanctuaries Foundation. And there's also, I think, a healthy acknowledgement and kind of an attempt to size the problem, right? What is the size of this problem? So it's increasing, we do. It has not been I wouldn't call it a reputational pressure for a company like ours, but there is increasing visibility and interest. Okay, so we have these field plastics that have impacts. How should we avoid those impacts? These are questions that we asked ourselves 3 or 4 years ago when we first started trying to wrap our heads about how to approach this effort, how to reduce the impacts of field plastics. And so, there's all kinds of pathways that we can work towards, and we are. One thing I want to make clear is this is the project that we are going to present on, and that my collaborators here will get into a lot of detail on, is really our kind of go-to-market. It's our commercial scale project. However, we are still looking and testing biodegradable mulches. We are, still looking at advanced recycling. Those are all what I would call in kind of the early, exploratory phase, and they haven't really moved beyond that. So our focus is mechanical recycling. It's the solution that has presented itself to us in the most kind of economically viable way. And also, in the early days of this effort, we worked with the UCSB Bren School to run some life cycle analyses on the different end-of-life solutions and looking at some different environmental indicators. A couple key ones here are global warming, eutrophication, acidification, and mechanical recycling came out in that life cycle analysis, came out as a net benefit compared to definitely to landfill disposal and incineration and advanced recycling. This work needs to be replicated and to some extent is being replicated and expanded upon. And it's important that we do that because when we did this, we were really just taught, these were concepts. These were not commercial scale solutions at the time. So we need to reapply this framework to what we see, the developments in these different end-of-life solutions. Okay, so getting into sort of what the project is. So another step that we took, we really needed to size the problem for us. And so we assessed the enterprise generation rates. What's the amount of field plastics that we're using? What is that amount by region, by type? And how much is being recycled? We needed to know the size of the problem and what to go after, how to prioritize. So as you can see, we have a number that we projected to be at in 2025. And we also, on the upper right, you'll see a breakdown of California-specific plastic generation rates and recycling rates. Tunnel plastic at that time was mostly recycled. Drip tape was partly recycled, but bed mulch and fumigation had essentially non-existent recycling rates. It's at 0, right? We generate a lot of it. We saw that in some earlier presentations today. All LDPE products. A lot of all of this material was going to the landfill. So we quickly realized that if we focus on bed mulch, which we generate a lot of, isn't heavily recycled, we could probably apply that to fumigation, and it might unlock some increased recycling rates in drip tape. So we developed solutions for field plastic recycling by focusing on highly contaminated and difficult to recycle materials, bed mulch, fumigation. And an important step that we took, not maybe initially, we had to kind of learn a few lessons, was we initially went after novel concepts, things that sounded great but weren't really fully ready for implementation, and then we quickly pivoted to a commercially scalable, commercially viable, economically viable solution, which we're going to continue to discuss here today with mechanical recycling. Not to say that we have not gotten to a point with this solution that is fully cost neutral or fully adopted. We have really exceeded our expectations on adoption rates, but we are probably not going to hit our goal, our very lofty goal of 0 field plastic going to the landfill by 2025. However, you can see on the bottom right, you can see the year that we really started, 2022, very low recycling rates on bed mulch. We grew that effort significantly in 2023, and in 2024, we have some pretty high percentage recycling rates in sight. So what is it? I'm going to go over this very briefly because Ben Andros and Theron Smith will go into the process in detail. But in general, we worked with our collaborators here on stage to implement a mechanical retrieval system to better roll the material, store it on site, transport it to a regional pre-processing facility, which we initially housed actually at one of our coolers in Oxnard, where we're cutting, tumbling, and compressing, right? And ultimately, this material is into the export market and is being converted into probably mostly single-use plastics. This is the first time in many, many, many years that anything even remotely approaching commercial scale mulch recycling has been in place. So it's a pretty big development for us. But again, we've got a long ways to go towards our goals of 100% landfill diversion away from landfills. Okay, so where are we at right now? Tunnel plastic, drip tape, it's all had this economic benefit associated with recycling. Growers will adopt it if there aren't other kind of complicating factors. Mulch and fume, when we first started out here was, we were looking at costs that were pretty significant, $50 to $80 extra per acre for a grower. Through continually scaling, working with our collaborators, working with our growers, getting growers comfortable with this process, we've been able to generate efficiencies and get the pricing down to something that's really close to cost neutral. Most importantly, growers are comfortable with it. We're not just introducing a different end-of-life solution. We've been introducing to many growers a different way of pulling this material from the field. So there's sort of two things that we have to generate, comfort and kind of ratchet that adoption up slowly, as presenters earlier today stated. We're continuing to reduce the price per acre through this mechanical recycling channel by increasing adoption. The more growers get comfortable with it, the better they are at it, the more efficient we become, the more volume there is, the better, our vendor collaborators can, better pricing they can get us. There's product consistency and repeat buyers. The buyers are getting more confident with what we're generating. But I will say in the beginning of this effort, and to some extent to this day, Driscoll's has had to participate. We've provided, per acre subsidies to our growers, to get them started, especially first-time growers. Whether that's through, renting the retrieval equipment that I showed a picture of, or just providing some cost share on that additional recycling cost. And there has been federal grants that have been awarded that are going to help us get to those next steps, those 70 to 80 to hopefully 100% recycling rates. That's going to fund some of this processing equipment that we saw here. So Driscoll's sort of cost participation in this project has gone down over time as those adoption rates have come up. But that initial investment from Driscoll's was really critical in getting this off the ground. I don't think that we would have been able to get this far without doing that. We really needed to kind of catalyze that first year of adoption. So where are we at? We're operationalizing this in California. What does that mean? That means that this will no longer be in a sustainability department, right? This will go into the hands of our production managers, the production managers that work with our growers. They work with our growers to coordinate planting, cultural practices, production estimates. So this will become part of the suite of collaboration that those production managers have with our growers. We're continuing to find ways to reduce the cost of this application to growers. We want to replicate this approach in Florida, in different parts of Mexico, where we just we have very close to zero recycling rates for this material. Everything that I've spoken through, this process has really been confined to California so far. There's been a small pilot in Florida that we've done. And then we're exploring industry collaboration to fully scale solutions and when appropriate, to communicate these successes externally. We feel like it's really not done until the whole industry has a solution in their hands, whether it's this one or a different one. And when I say the industry, I mean the berry industry, but ultimately it probably needs to be all users of agricultural mulch films. We're reassessing generation rates and progress. So we did an assessment of the generation rates and recycling rates early on. We need to redo that now that we've had some success. And most importantly, we need to develop backup, alternative, and closed loop solutions, right? This is all going into one channel, and it's been great, and we are very grateful for it, but I think everybody involved in it would admit that we need some alternative channels that we can send this material to, and ideally some closed loop solutions as well, which we're working on. There's interesting stuff out there like tunnel stakes and plastic wood and multiple different solutions. So I will hand it. I will take some, that's all I have for today, but I will take some questions, especially if they're oriented towards kind of Driscoll's journey here. I would urge you to keep process questions on hold until the experts come up here and speak to you more. All right, everybody?
I'll start off just so they're thinking about it. But did you bring us any berries?
What was that?
Did you bring us any berries? We didn't want
did not.
pictures.
I did not. I'm sorry. The next conference, I'll have stacks of Driscoll's
you.
berries out there. Yeah. There was a little snafu with that. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Hi, this is Dada here from Washington State University. So thank you for the presentation, and I kindly understand that mechanical recycling is the best among landfilling and incineration due to the environmental impact. But I'm concerned about the eutrophication and the ecotoxicity that can spring out from mechanical recycling. So how do you handle that, considering there will be some water from cleaning the mulches, and how do you handle eutrophication in such an instance?
Yeah.
I have another follow-up question. Maybe you answer that first.
Okay, great. Yeah. I think the simplest way, I'll go back to this process. So we are not, there's no wash cycle associated, wet wash cycle associated with this process within our regions of production, right? So I think where that takes place might be something, and the implications for that might be something that the next speakers can speak to, but within California operations, for example, here, there is no wash cycle. It's a dry wash cycle. It's cutting, sizing, dropping soil, plant, and water through a dry cycle.
Okay. So what of the chemicals that could come from the field, from the use of fertilizer and herbicide? Do you consider that?
Yeah, we have, and we've, in some of the closed loop pilots that we've been doing, there has been analysis of those materials. Our materials have never shown an issue. There has been tests for some of those materials that might, be adhered to soil particles on the plastic. We've not experienced an issue. We have heard, rumors out there of issues in the past, but it's not something that we've experienced.
Okay, that's good. And also the facility in the United States, the information I have, maybe I might be wrong, there is no widespread facility for mulch recycling in nationwide. Are there available facilities for mulch recycling? And also, are there enough feedstock to actually operate those facilities?
So I am definitely not the person that should be answering these questions, but I will take a crack at it. This is all going into export. So this is this is all export material currently. We do want to loop some of this back in to products that are used in our supply chain or add a domestic recycling channel, but currently this is, most if not all is exported.
Quick question, is this for California only, or?
This is we have started this effort in California. We have a small pilot that we did in Florida last year, but the intention is to apply the learnings and this equipment, to literally take this equipment or parts of this process and apply that in the areas where we don't have any solutions in place. So the answer to the question is no, we want it to grow beyond California, but this is where we're really perfecting it.
And one follow-up question, are you getting any support from the manufacturers of the original products on this?
This has mostly been a collaboration between the folks that you see up here and our growers. The film industry is engaged in this, and I think willing to support. We haven't really asked anybody to do anything yet, I think is the short answer to that. Yeah. There is an important role of the film manufacturers, though, and I think that's important to say, is that this all is enabled by having the right characteristics of plastic to lift and to retrieve. If it comes out in pieces, and that is something that our film manufacturers and distributors are very aware of, is this doesn't work if the mulch comes out in pieces. It has to come out with structural integrity so that we can roll it, move it. This whole thing relies on that. So that's really the first point of collaboration, is assuring that this is taken into account in the design criteria for soil applied films. One thing I forgot to mention is We are also applying this to nursery fumigation, and so we're in the thousands of acres now. I know I provided percentages, but this is, we are in the thousands of acres of mulch film recycled and approaching thousands of acres in fumigation film. So we've got, some real significant acreage that we've been able to do. And again, outside of mulch as well, in mulch fumigation film as well. All right. All right, thanks. Go ahead, Ben.
Great, thank you. And I'll just add a little bit to say that we have seen a lot of participation, and from our trials that we've done, not only has Driscoll's been involved, but we also, as you see present in the room, Nature Ripe and Cal Giant have been very involved. And then beyond that, we've also seen a lot of involvement from academia, from Washington State University to Cal Poly with the California Strawberry Center, and then as well support from the Strawberry Commission with Bill being present here as well today. Great. Well, we'll go on to our next speaker, who is wide awake. Was telling me I'm not going to eat any carbohydrates because I don't want to be sleepy. So he's wide awake today. Who will be presenting on farm mechanization impacts on recycling. Ben Andros is president with Andros Engineering Corporation, and he's while at Andros Engineering, he has worked on various technical and leadership roles, and he was appointed president in 2023. And he has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering as well as a master's from the University of Southern California. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Jazmine, for that very thorough introduction. Hello, everyone. I am Ben Andros, and first a big shout out to Gene. He's not in the room, so he's not going to hear me say this, but a lot of the principles we've applied here is already stuff he had tried in Florida. We just got the right people in the room to make that happen, and that actually happened at an APRC years ago when just Theron and Jazmine and me happened to have dinner down at the hotel, and kind of the rest is history. Millions of dollars in funding, thousands of acres of mulch recycled, actual, boots on the ground, wheels turning, action happening. Solving problems. So should be very excited about what's going on here. And also a big thanks to all the film manufacturers that came out today. One of the prefaces to this discussion that I generally like to give is plasticulture is a miracle in terms of how it produces food for all of us to eat. It's a necessity, and we don't want to lose sight of that. And so working together to keep the plasticulture beneficial both for the environment and for our food supply is pretty important. So with that in mind, we'll jump right into it. I'll try to cover as little ground as has already been covered. We're all talking about most of the same stuff, but by way of introduction, Andros Engineering, we're an ag equipment company. We build, as our core business, designing both single article machinery, that's kind of the genesis of the company, for large scale farms to mechanize or previous labor processes. That over the years, company started in the 90s, but my dad morphed into our own equipment line, and then about 10 years ago, specifically as single-use drip tape became a factor on the West Coast, we built out an ag services division. I'm joined with Dan Johnston from our ag services division here runs that, where we build a market for our machinery by facilitating drip tape and drip hose recycling. So I'll cut right to the end. Mechanization made drip tape circularity possible, as Tate and Jesse built out for us earlier today. I think it can do the same thing for mulch specifically, but really any other hard to handle ag plastics. So we'll talk about it through this little agenda here. We'll start with the plasticulture cycle. We've already had a couple slides that have talked about this. This is the way that we think about it at Andros. Notwithstanding the time that the plastic is oil on the ground, it is created into some sort of film. The farmer or the end user makes their selection. It's bought. It's then installed into the ground or injected, in the case of drip tape. The farmer uses it. It's then extracted, which is kind of Andros jargon for yanked out of the ground, and then it's retrieved or densified, then ideally moved over to the recycler, recycled, and then put back into something in the same project. The nugget I'm trying to bring today is that these 3 steps have gotten kind of short shrift over the years in so far as how important it is that we mechanize the process for these steps as an unlock for being able to recycle further down the line. So with that in mind, let's talk about it in drip tape, regurgitating as little of Netafim's presentation as I can. But in terms of the way Andros looks at the cycle, drip tape recycling is a lock, right? It's great. First, on the manufacturing side, it's a little bit thicker than mulch, right? Even in thin wall drip, and then they've got a heavy wall dripper product that can readily accept repro pellets, so that's great. In terms of the sale and selection of drip tape, almost all drip tapes are recyclable and comminglable and will stay recyclable so long as there's some sort of exotic emitter inside the drip tape. So while every brand has their own value claim, in terms of recyclability, it's pretty much always recyclable. Modern installation, no commercial farm is putting drip tape into the field without some sort of mechanical and often GPS driven, and if you've got a Andros Boss sled like shown here and are running some sort of ground following tubes, we're putting the plastic sub-inch into the ground and exactly where it's supposed to be, which apart from the farmers in the room, we all think is great, but doesn't really affect the recyclability. What it does is allow us to get it out of the ground in one piece because we know where we left it underground, kind of like finding our buried treasure, all right? In terms of use, as far as ex-plastics goes, drip tape actually has a pretty easy life. Only half of it is exposed to soil, right? The inside's just getting ideally clean, filtered water. It's protected from the sun. There's less thermal cycles under the ground, or the amplitude of the thermal cycles should be lower down there. And it's left alone to do its job underground until we're ready to get it out. And then, assuming you have the right equipment, it's relatively easy to extract from the ground. Again, no one doing this manually, generally, with the exception of shorter runs on some specialty crops, is doing this without a machine. But we can mechanize this process relatively easy based on the material properties of drip tape. It's 2-ply, it's kicking strong, great tensile strength. Here, as you see with this bumpy pulling the tape out of the ground, there's some ancillary cleaning just through the function of how it's removed through the ground, although some water may stay inside of the drip line. Drip tape is well densified in the field with a mega binder or a high quality winder like this. And again, in the case of the Andros machine, the drip tape is further cleaned on its way in by the function of the pinch wheels pushing mud, water out of the tubes, as well as providing some exterior cleaning through their functionality. If you don't wind it up properly, you end up with a picture like this, which is obviously a bummer. And as we'll get into the value cycle around drip tape, historically, this is where all the margin available to anyone in the trying to build a circular economy would go, right? We would just eat up all the money to be saved or made by a laborious process here with an Andros crew helping a farm out trying to get this stuff out of the field. So total disaster. All right, if it's properly densified with that in-field equipment, now transportation directly to a recycler is possible without having to send it to a baler or to a MRF where it's commingled with other plastics and other trash. Oh, by the way, a mechanical recycler is going to feel very comfortable with this roll because they know it was made in the field, and so the chance of including a wrench or a big rock or some other type of contaminant that's going to destroy their grinder starts to diminish greatly. And then we can here shown being moved by Dan, actually, with a squeeze, but can be moved with a forklift, typical warehouse equipment, no big deal. And then I'll probably catch some spears for this, but it's generally easy to recycle insofar as that the contamination is known and the material is homogeneous. Right, it shouldn't be commingled as long as it was densified in the field with other plastics, and it's water and dirt, and there's a room full of people over here that'll sell you some great equipment to handle all those kind of problems as you recycle it, right? The economics work out well too. Andros' position in this market didn't start with recycling. Recycling wasn't a thing. We actually started building equipment and still build equipment to reuse drip tape over multiple seasons by taking it out of the ground and putting it back in. But the labor picture, especially on the West Coast, is such that it's not economically viable anymore. And so the equipment we built was originally designed to save farmers' labor. However, it dovetails nicely and has been kind of tweaked to fit into the recycling stream. And so growers are all about switching to this process because it saves them time and labor. And to Barry's point, it makes the farm look a lot cleaner. You mentioned that the other day, James, how like one of his favorite pictures is all the row of rolls of mulch that looks pretty compared to the giant pile that they used to have with plants growing in it. There is a robust demand for drip tape as a recyclate. We're having to balance our buyers against one another because so many people want to recycle it, because once you've learned how to solve the water and the dirt problem, it's a homogeneous stream. And then manufacturers of drip tape, every major manufacturer, we got Toro here in the room as well today, they've got a way to use repro and are using repro in their product. Netafim obviously presented on it. Everyone wants to use it because you can truly achieve circularity. So it's a win. And that switch happened really fast with the transition to single-use drip tape in California. When we had the right farms involved in understanding the economics of the situation, we had the mechanization ready to go from Andros, since we'd already had the equipment built for labor-saving purposes. And then we had Netafim ready to, with their CalRecycle grant, their factory to accept the recyclate, produce raw material, and move it back into the market. So from this win, we could take a couple axioms and let's look at applying those to mulch, right? One, it's got to make economic sense for everyone, preaching to the choir there. Two, mechanization of the field practices is required. Hopefully everyone here is going to back me up on that, because I have a vested interest in that happening, being the person who's building the machinery. But really, I hope it's Andros machinery, but it just needs to be mechanized, right? And then lastly, and I think we saw that both with the European recycling that's going on, they're mechanizing the asparagus sand pocket destroyer machine. Like, that is directly driving into recycling, right? We've got to mechanize the field processes for it to make economic sense for everyone. And then the last, and this is kind of my picadillo here, is that you've got one chance to densify ag plastics in a way that makes economic sense, and that is when it is laid out in these beautiful lines in the field. After that, all bets are off. You've got a mess on your hands. So the chance to economically densify your material is when it is in the field. And that's going to be something we're going to apply to looking at mulch as we quickly go along here. Whoop. That was weird. All right, hopefully there's more slides than that left. All right, so let's look at the same cycle for mulch. Generally speaking, you walk by drip tape, you can tell who made the drip tape. Walk by mulch, no idea who made the mulch, right? It's more of a commoditized product, a little less of a brand association with each of it. Also, not all mulch is made equally in terms of recycling. Some we would consider recyclable, some not, especially depending on how it reacts to UV rays. In terms of the selection sale, after in Andros' experience, after the color and the size are selected, the primary criteria is cost, and that is driven to significant down gauging over the years. Thinner and thinner mulch, which is harder and harder to handle in the field. In terms of installation, much the same story here. Usually shorter runs, so maybe not GPS, but we've got anyone doing on a commercial basis is putting this machinery or this product down with the machine. The gotcha, though, is that the technique, drip tape, certainly the depth and number of lines per bed will change, but it's pretty much always just buried in the ground, right? For mulch, we've got all kinds of different manners of securing the edges. Is it straight down? Do they make an L? Do they make a U? How deep does it go? What soil, the impact of the soil type, difference between a nice sand in Florida and heavy mud or clay soil on the West Coast can really impact the ability for us to get this stuff out in a clean manner. In terms of use, All the things that were working for us for drip tape now work against us for mulch. Mulch is like one of the most highly engineered plastics used on the farm. Super thin, super strong, super stretchy, but then we stick it so it's super thin. Then it's exposed to the sun, people are walking on it, driving over it. Sometimes it's intentionally cut during its use to help change the temperature of the bed if they're looking for certain thermal properties. So all in all, very challenging use case for the thinnest plastic we've got working for us on the farm. That makes extraction a real challenge here because the material, if you can't pull it out with your hands, you're not going to be able to pull it out with a machine. And often the case is that as you try and honk on this stuff to get it out of the ground, it's going to break up and leave significant amount of plastic in the field. With strawberries specifically, which is our focus today, they're going to mow the field to start, and depending on the tractor driver, they may mow part of the bed as well. And so just pulverize the mulch from that. And then anytime you're pulling that mulch out of its tuck, and especially over the corner of the bed, very, very technically challenging. The good news is, one other impact there for extracting the mulch, we talked about how important those labor savings were for the farmer. We're kind of in a transition period with this, but strawberries for the foreseeable future are going to be harvested by hand, and so it can be a tougher value proposition if there's already sunk costs for the farmer and having the labor on the field. Meaning to say that they may want to manually extract the mulch because, hey, I've got 100 harvesters out here. The next field's not ready for 2 days. I'm just going to have them yank the mulch by hand, which makes economic sense, but now we've got a bunch of wadded up mulch full of plant matter and trash that is not suitable for recycling. Good news is, though, if it's lifted properly, it densifies just as good as we would see drip tape and cleaned on the way in. This is one of Gene's slides, same hazard here of not winding it up. Here we've got a full-on tree growing in the mulch. Mulch often coming out is over 50% dirt, right? Which means it's ripe for growing a whole second crop inside of it. As I already mentioned, easy to move, same properties there. It can be moved often on a flatbed truck, just one step over to its final destination, and looks pretty from a food safety and a farm cleanliness standpoint. Recycling's, run a wash line before. There's certainly people in the room here with much more experience in this than me, but my understanding is it's pretty hard to recycle, and that certainly was my experience. The surface area to mass ratio is as bad as it gets for plastic, and then flexible film's just hard on your equipment, hard to move around the plant, and the different types of plastic colors vary, whereas with some other ag plastics, hoop house film, for instance, all going to be natural, pretty Gucci stuff. Not as a rosy picture on the economic side either, right? Extraction from a farmer labor savings point, a little bit, while it's technically possible and certainly economically beneficial to reduce labor, the picture's just more complicated. For recyclers, pretty hesitant to take the material based on the historic level of contamination. Going to need to do some convincing there. And we have a less branded product historically, and more on this in a minute, but the manufacturer is not as involved or incentivized, especially since cost is one of their primary ways to compete to work this back into their own material. So overall, not a great picture, so I think we'll just give up, right? So that was the answer for a while, but I think we're kind of at what I would call a sea change in mulch. James already referenced the same article. 5 or 10 years, Andros has been working on the mechanization side of this for over a decade. Lots of swings, lots of misses, because it's a very challenging technical problem. And one of the issues that we ran into is that not every player in the value cycle is invested in seeing it change. That is definitely changing 100%. And part of that is drip tape's ability to be recycled has changed people's expectations. Farmer says, hey, you're recycling my drip tape, why can't we do the mulch? Landfill pressure on the West Coast is a real deal, which we've talked about. Both sides of my mouth here, but as far as labor goes, but that's rapidly becoming a primary driver to looking to mechanize this, which, as we've seen, dovetails nicely with making a product recyclable. And then we've talked also ad nauseum about the other two on there. The industry partnership very robust so far for mulch, with the exception is, we're here and excited to have so many people involved in the creation of mulch in the room, because there's a big opportunity there. We've got the other pieces of the puzzle on the table for mulch, with that, Driscoll's has been an amazing partner in making this work. In terms of providing opportunities for us to test and try new things that two small companies like Andros and Flipping Iron would never have gotten on their own. We landed for mechanization. Andros is there ready to support with what we think is the right machinery, and then in this use case, because of the size of the farms, it made sense for Flipping Iron to be the service provider, since a mega binder is basically hyper efficient for the size of farms we're dealing with. So they're there. We just need someone to step into that role on the manufacturing side as well. Theron will talk more about this. This is part of it. This is where Jazmine's team came in and helped us out, especially in making this a reality of the engineering that goes behind processing in that mulch concentration area, we would call it, where a lot of mulch is intensively used. I can answer some technical questions, but I'll leave the rest of that to Theron. And here's my, if you're a presentation wonk, like the call to action part, like what from an equipment guy's perspective, where do I think everyone here has a collaborative opportunity? We've already hit with multiple manufacturers so far that, like, the repo folks need to know what you need so they can make it for you, because there are water problems notwithstanding, there are people on the West Coast who are standing by to recycle the plastic. And while this technology matures, if we can find other ways for manufacturers to use this repro in different products, thicker gauge material, that may be an option. And then, I don't know how controversial you can be at a recycling conference, but I'll say it. Thinner mulch might not be the answer from sustainability. It's a who decides type question. Are you more worried about how much plastic is created, or more worried about how much is getting into the waste stream? One of the big things that came out of some a recent presentation at AMI is that China is actually mandating that their farmers use thicker mulch. And the understanding behind that is because it leaves less of it in the field. Thin mulch is a big problem when you're trying to get it out of the field. In fact, I was talking to a sales rep at the Strawberry Commission event, Gerald's event, and he said, my farmers are complaining they wanted thinner mulch, but it's tearing as it comes off the roll. Tearing as it comes off the roll, like, we're never going to get it out of the ground, right? So that may be a big opportunity for an ag film producer. There's a lot at risk when you change something on the farm for farmers, and so I'm also glad there's so much of the academy in the room today, because farmers need to understand what the agronomic impacts are going to be if we do ask them to do something different without putting their livelihood at risk. All this is, built out of supporting the farmer, and so when we ask them to take a risk, we need to be giving them the best data that we can, using that second bullet there as an example. For growers, this is definitely changing. Driscoll's waving the flag there, but having Hillary in the room and all the other growers, shippers around, definitely a mindset change has taken place in the last couple of years here, with being open to some flux, some churn as we go through this, being willing to spend a little bit of money, and being willing also to separate the mulch from the drip tape. Believe it or not, that was a big obstacle. People didn't want to do that. For government, there's things that government are doing, whether or not they're intentionally doing it to incentivize mulch recycling. It's happening. Increasing the tipping fees for mulch specifically, or other hard-to-hand plastics, is driving people to us who might not have come on their own. We've seen very successful CapEx subsidization. The government gave us some money, and specifically here with Jazmine's group, getting that money to just get the ball rolling on a commercially viable project, and then it removes that barrier to entry, and then we're off to the races. We can make this commercially viable from there. And then EPR we've talked about, and then seems crazy to have to put it up here, but making it against the law, especially in Florida, to burn the plastic in the field is going to push people into our side. For the recyclers in the room, preaching to the choir here, but if you can find a way to accommodate mulch, you're going to carve a niche out for yourself. in the industry. There will be people beating on your door to give you very low-cost material to run on your machinery. So, and then I'm not off the hook either on the equipment manufacturing side. We need to, we've got a ways to go on collaborating in a universal mulch extractor that'll get it out of the field reliably and in one piece. That effort's ongoing. We're actually, right now, through CMSF's funding, we're working on the next version of the pre-processing line that Theron's working. That's going to get fielded here in the next year or two. So, I think mechanization is an unlock to make this happen, right? This is a key that has not been turned in a lot of these situations for ag plastics, right? We just kind of assumed that the farm was going to do what the farm was going to do, and we had to react to it. Mechanizing it has proven to facilitate recycling in a big way, but it only works if everybody in the value chain is incentivized. It's been that way for drip tape for a while. I think it's changing for mulch. It's got me super excited. So, with that in mind, I'll take any questions you got before I kick it over to Theron. Anyone? That's fine if not.
Over there.
Oh.
I think other people have addressed this too, but could you talk a little bit about how the soil, especially with the mulch, is there a process for removing the soil that adheres? I'm not talking about the loose soil that would come off in a tumbler, but the soil that's adhering to the surface. You said there was quite a bit of soil. The ratio, I can't remember, you said it was more soil than plastic?
Yeah, often more soil than plastic. Yeah, absolutely.
So what is that challenge and are possible solutions?
Sure. It is very challenging. It's especially challenging with cast and boss film that has little pockets to hold on to dirt. Again, Gene's got some great research on that available on Washington State's website. Encourage you to check that out. In terms of what happens in the field, and this has been collaborated by other machinery tests, is that retrieving from the end of the row helps with that. So very tempting to build a machine that just drives over the row and winds it up as you go along. Makes logical sense, right? But by lifting the mulch and then pulling from the end of the row, we find that just by virtue of that process, we shed a lot of the biologic material as well as a lot of the soil. The goal with the pre-processing, and Theron will hit on this more, is to get we know we're not going to get it completely clean, but to avoid adding water to the process, which unless you're drying, obviously adds a lot of weight, but to get the yield high enough where it makes economic sense. After that, recyclers have been dealing with dirty plastic for years. It just can't be that dirty. And so they've got the technology to wash, friction scrub, do all kinds of stuff on their wash line to get this back to a clean enough product to be used again. The pre-processing process just gets the logistics, the yield equation such that they can support it. Fortunately, we've tried brushes, tap on it, blow on it, whatever we can do out there to try and remove as much as we can. And without damaging the mulch specifically, there's not much you can do to remove that really finely ingrained plastic until you get in our experience, until you get into the mechanical wash facility.
So what is the percentage of contamination using your equipment, pulling the mulch out from one end?
Theron's got the numbers on that in his presentation, so I'll let him land the plane there, but it's better. It's not great, but when you're terrible and you go from terrible to meh, it's usually a win, right?
And then what's currently happening with the mulch that you guys do remove?
Sure.
If it's on to recycle it.
We've got a couple great partners that are handling it. It's export, West Coast. To give you the inside baseball here, a very strange kind of market distortion based on the way world trade works, right? It's cheaper to ship something from LA to China than it is from LA to New Mexico. So, and I should say not necessarily China, but Southeast Asia. So there's a lot of anyone who's been in the recycling industry for a while knows it's about the backhaul, right? It's about maximizing the logistics, because that's generally where all the margin is consumed. And so we've got an opportunity to work with some trusted people in Asia that are happy to recycle it for us. And they come back and ask for more, which is pretty encouraging. It's not like, yeah, we'll try it. Now they've made repeat orders for that. Theron can help us out a little bit on that too. Good question.
You mentioned that the mega binder is really effective for a certain size of farm. Can you talk about the scale of farm that you're really aiming for with this technology and recycling, and how small you might go in the future?
Sure, great question, one we get all the time. It's about markets. It's a capital piece of equipment, and for the mega binder specifically, we're positioned as a premium brand. So we're talking large scale farms that it would make sense to own that piece of equipment. Theron's carved out a great market niche for him with your typical strawberry size farm where what's your acres per hour? Like 3 acres an hour on mulch, right? Every 20 minutes. Yeah, so they're doing, conceivably in a couple of days, cleaning the whole farm up for a typical 50-acre farm, and that seems to work better. So I think that obviously we make it, so I'm going to say it's the right answer, but we think that there's a way to segment the market so everyone can take advantage of the high capacity and get the material into that large roll format that is so important for effective logistics. Without everyone, if everyone wants to buy one, we'll build it, no big deal. But generally speaking, it would be better for us to facilitate different people in the market so that everyone has access to the technology. We make smaller winders too. It's called Ultra Binder. It was made before Mega, so it got Ultra. It's a bummer, but Ultra Binder is a smaller, about 250-pound roll, very common as well, especially in foreign markets. Anything else?
Great, thank you. And I think one of the things that the partners are highlighting so far, which I think has been case, whether or not you realize it, is that there's been different eyes on these projects. And everything, from a year ago, there was a whole conference from the organic side for Washington State, or for DC Organics Week that was led by Amber, that was completely focused on plastics. And so there's been different eyes. We also, as part of the NOAA Sea Grant, provided a brief to Congress on some of the projects that we've been doing. So I think from sort of the macro scale down to the micro scale of working directly with the farmers, even with some of the surveys that Gwen has been providing and doing with stakeholders, it really does allow to have an informed project. But next we'll be hearing from Theron. So for some of you that are familiar with Theron, he's been part of the industry recycling business for the past 25 years, and he started with his grandfather working with iron, and that's why it's called flipping iron, for those that are curious as to why it's called flipping iron. But from there, it has evolved, and now part of their portfolio includes ag plastics recyclings. And so now for the past some years now, they've been working together with collaborating with partners from industry, growers, shippers, growers, but also with some of the other stakeholders that were present before, learning a lot from some of the lessons learned from the organizations that had been here previously. And now their focus has been to improve sort of the mechanical retrieval from agricultural fields, and they're also part of our NOAA Sea Grant project. So without that, it wouldn't be possible. So thank you very much, and Theron.
Thank you, everybody. Want to take a quick moment and just shout out to Gene Jones and organizing this event. You might wonder why we weren't here last year. That's a good question for him, but I hope we're here next year, and I hope to see everybody else. So thank you, Gene Jones. Let's give a round of applause to Gene once again. And we're going to highlight a lot of what was already said. And so please stay with me. If you've already heard it from James or Ben or Jazmine, it's because we're a good team. and teamwork is what is going to make this happen. I didn't go there. I didn't say what everybody was thinking, but teamwork is what is needed. So we're going to start off with who Flipping Iron is, our strategies and a lot of things. As Jazmine already brought out, we are a metal company. That is my background. I've been doing it since I was 16 years old. But frankly, metal's easy. I don't go to metal recycling conventions because I don't want to talk about it. It's easy. The plastics is what is difficult. However, strategies that we have found throughout the years, Ben's dad and myself actually started working on the Mega Binder when Ben was up in the air flying planes. Ben's dad and myself, we actually started in Mulch individually together, but in our own companies. That was a complete failure for me. I swore I'd never do Mulch again, but here I am today. So, masochist, I guess. But we're Flipping Iron. We'll go ahead and, it's my first time using one of these. So this is a promo that we have, and it just basically shows what we recycle. This is a large list of what we recycle. And we really recycle throughout the West Coast. We are based in Bakersfield, California. However, we go throughout the whole West Coast of the United States. You might notice on there's some very difficult things that we highlighted: mulch film, tires, PVC. Yes, we recycle all of those things. But we found that the problem with a lot of these products is not that they're not recyclable, but really the problem is contamination, difficult to transport, labor intensive, and low value. So as Flipping Iron, we seek to try to overcome those things. I heard multiple times last night at the social hour, if you can figure out transportation, if you can figure out logistics, you can recycle. And I think that's what Ben was highlighting a lot, is the Mega Binders solve a lot of those problems. But what we're going to go into is solutions, the right equipment, the best practices and training, and cross-market collaboration. So let's see a couple of examples on how we've been successful at this. Now, these are 3 projects that Flipping Iron is currently today completing. HDPE corrugated pipe. We had Dan Currents here earlier that from the PPI. We're members of the PPI. This material is actually pretty valuable, except there's a lot of air. So logistics is a nightmare. Truckloads might weigh 5,000 pounds. So if you have to transport this from your yard to a processor, maybe in LA, it might cost you $1,000, and you have 5,000 pounds on there. You can do the math pretty easy on how much per pound that just costs you to recycle. Tires, who wants to recycle tires? We obviously do. Once again, masochist. And then PVC. These are all projects on the field that we're working on. So let's take the PVC. Start off with the right equipment. We have found that transporting plastics to a facility where you process it is expensive and costs money and eats up any margins possible to be able to perform the work. So buying the right equipment, utilizing the right equipment, loading super sacks on site processing. And really, we don't even take this to our yard. We have a mobile ramp. We'll call trucks, whether we're selling it export or domestic. Trucks show up to the facility, load the trucks right there, cut down on that export. Once again, the right equipment and best practices. Next, tires. We've built some mobile balers, or had built some mobile balers, and we bale tires on site and export it. It's pretty simple. Once again, the right equipment, on-site densification. It's key to what we have found successful. Whereas so much is taken up with transportation, there's some transportation that we just can't eliminate. Getting it from that location to the port, we can't do anything about that. But shipping things loose, we have found most of the time it's better to be on site with the right equipment. And that's what Flipping Iron has done, is investing in the right equipment. This is an example of how we're handling that HDPE corrugated pipe. It's the same machine as the PVC. Basically, taking the right equipment on site, densifying it, and we're actually using the baler too, because it makes such big shreds that we densify it and then bale it instead of putting in super sacks. The best practice is looking at creative ways to solving solutions. A lot of times you can shred right into super sacks, however, this material was still too light, so we had to reduce the transportation cost by putting in one of our mobile balers, and it reduces and it eliminates contamination, really. Reduces, or this was post-industrial stuff, so it didn't contaminate it. That's what, we didn't want that to happen. And then when you take these into account, you can produce a commodity. And really, that's what we need to think about. Mulch film, ag plastics, ground contact film, is how can we produce a commodity? How can we stop treating it like trash? And that commodity is recyclable, it's marketable, and this is what we're dealing with. So this part of the presentation is ground contact plastics. So taking those strategies we've had with other hard to handle plastics, we have applied it to ground contact plastics. We've heard a lot of them. Maybe you're not as familiar with PP freeze cloth. It's something used at nurseries, and basically it just warms up the bed. It's not a lot of it except in regional areas, but where they use a lot of it. Low tunnel film is the other one. So what success has flipping iron had in ground contact plastics, and how have we been able to do so, and how have we applied those strategies before? Well, this is what we've seen many pictures of this, similar piles of ground contact plastics that have not been handled as a commodity. These have been handled as trash. Yes, they're contaminated, they're bulky, expensive to transport, heavy, not recyclable. They are trash, not a commodity. Let's have a different change of thought. It's ag plastics, not trash. That's our model. That's our mentality. That's the way we view it. That's the culture that we try to bring to farmers. If you treat it like trash, it's going to be trash. If you treat it like a commodity, we're going to work our butts off to make sure it gets recycled. This is the alternative. This, in some ways, is probably, this bottom picture here is probably, probably about 25 acres worth of mulch in that little section. It's clean, it's easy to handle. People don't mind it being stored as much. They don't want there very long. But this is what we tell people is you come with us, you go with the mega binder, you will get a commodity out of it. But it's also partly applying those best practices, or those best practices and the right equipment. So we talked about the culture of flipping iron. This was actually a promotional banner that we had in 2021, I believe, at the Ag Show. And this before we were doing any recycling with mulch film, excuse me. And flipping iron, it's ag plastics, not trash. So this is what we were, the culture that we were trying to change inside the industry, even before we started recycling mulch. So we talked about plastic culture. Now, if you notice, Jazmine didn't really introduce my education. High school graduate, okay? So sometimes I'm a little slow on picking up on things. So when I first heard of plastic culture, I thought it was the culture of using plastic in your company, like what you thought of plastic. Little did I know it was plastic agriculture, but you know, Ben knows I'm dense sometimes. He has to speak slowly for me sometimes. So this is what plastic culture is. The plastic culture is the practice of using plastic materials in agricultural applications. Somebody read this to me once, so I'm like, oh, thank you. But we think of plastic culture as if you treat plastic as trash, it will be trash. If you treat it as a commodity, it will be a commodity. What is the culture in your company for plastic? What is the culture for how you treat your employees? What is the culture for how you treat your customers? How you treat your vendors? What is the culture for how you treat your plastics? Now, nobody's going to take that on probably, but it's what I thought for a year, so, you know, be nice. All right, so, but really, the success we've had is because of the collaborative effort. The collaborative effort of these individuals and more. While I was sitting up here, I was thinking of a few people that we should have put up here, but CGRAT, CMSF, Andros, Driscoll's, some of our buyers, Doc 7, who's in the room, Windstream, I don't think they're here today, but these are ones that have made it a success. Yes, we export. We'll get that out of the way right now. We export, we have to export. There's no other option for us besides putting it in the landfill that we have found up to this point. So strawberry mulch film, as it was brought out 2 years ago, there was kind of revolutionary change. That's why I kind of gave a shout out to Gene. We were here with James. I was here with Ben. I was here with Jazmine. We were doing no mulch film 2 years ago at this show. And relatively quickly, we transitioned that to being able to do quite a bit, and we'll get into that. But in 2022, 30,000 acres of mulch, strawberry bed film, and this is one particular ground contact film, but strawberry bed film. There was zero recycling, as James has already brought out. We had already been using the Mega Binder to encouraging farmers to best practice at that time, and the right equipment at that time was still to use the Mega Binder, roll up your mulch film, and would throw it away. And we have proof that that was the best practice, and if we lose exporting, would be the best practice going back to. 2 years ago, we had the wettest winter on record here in California for some areas, and at times we pulled out 2,500 pounds of trash from the field, yet there's only about 500 pounds of mulch film that goes in. However, with the Mega Binder, we never got over 900 pounds per acre. So even there, if we had to throw it away, it's still the best equipment. It's still the right equipment to be able to implement the best practices. And but that wasn't enough. If you look at that film, as it's been talked about, it's pretty dirty still. That was back in 2022 or 2023 when it was so rainy. And farmers or processors still didn't want it. Why not? Because we were still only getting it to maybe 40, 50% yield, even with the Mega Binder. Well, CMSF and Sea Grant, and we worked together with Driscoll's, Andros, and we applied for a grant that said, hey, we know the Mega Binder works, but we need additional processing cleaning it up. And it came through. It was awesome. We were not expecting it. I don't think any of us were expecting it. Ben and I'd never done a grant. I think Ben had applied once before to something else, and we both said, like, seems like a lot of waste of time, but it wasn't, and we had to apologize to Jazmine for having a bad attitude for it. You know, we had to go stand in the corner. She said, go stand in the corner, you have a bad attitude. No, but it came through. And what's interesting about this is the prototype line that Ben and his team have actually improved quite a bit. Right now, we're pretty much just showing the trommel. But what's interesting about this is that this came from a defunct mulch film recycler. So the point that we're going to highlight here is that we really don't have secret sauce that nobody else can mimic. Ben probably doesn't want me to say that, but the reality is our techniques are simple. That's what we want to say. They're not complicated. They're not something that can't be done in the right way in other regions. James talks about he wants to go to other regions. Because it's simple, we can implement this in other locations. So this is the trommel line. Now this trommel, as you said, it was from a defunct recycler. However, let's not downplay the fact that Andros did figure out some key things, what we do or why we use it. One of them is just the angle of the trommel. If it's at the wrong angle, plastic will just go right through and never get washed. So here's a little video. Do I just push it again? Yeah? Okay. So this is a video of the guillotine starting, and I'm going to talk through it. You see the Mega Binder roll there? That's about 1,000 pounds, 700 to 1,000 pounds, depending on how well they rolled it, how much water is in there. But when you bring it in like this, our first test of this was shredding it. And shredding it made pockets of wood. These make what we call ribbons of plastic. They're pretty uniform, and you'll see them going up the conveyor here in just a moment. And then they go into the trommel line, and they don't, the plastic doesn't wrap around. It actually stays. So it allows for a lot more work. Looks like a big washing machine right there, and it's pretty much uniform 16 to 20 inch strips of plastic that run through there. And what we're just trying to do is knock off as much dirt and organics and give it time to dry. This is, you've seen like different paint jobs. We've improved, Andros has improved on the machine to the point where we've got, better looking and also better running equipment that runs throughout the day. So this is the guillotine. It's Andros design, Andros engineered guillotine. That's a junky backyard elevator. Our trommel. This is the new elevator that Andros designed and built for this application specifically, and then the baler to densify the material that is coming out. This is what it looked like before going in. Ran it through the processing line, and this is what it looks like coming out. So pretty significant return on yields. What is typically anywhere between a 10 to 30% yield of plastic. Even in the wettest or rainiest season, we have seen that yield go anywhere between 45 on a low end up to 60. And so the question, you might ask is like, well, why not cleaner? Well, this is one, I always say in recycling, we're pretty lazy. We just want to do the minimum we have to do to get somebody else to take our problem. And so in recycling world, it's about 50 to 70% in ag film recycling is pretty well known. Drip tape is about 70%. 50% is kind of contaminated films. So that's really all we had to get it to, was to be able to get people in the Southeast Asian market to take it. And that was the goal. That being said, is we can improve it even more if necessary. So what's the problem though with this recycling? Well, it's cost distribution. Farmers absorb all the cost. Whether it's landfill costs, employee costs, recycling costs, equipment costs. I'm not for profit. None of our companies except Jazmine's is, I think. I think CMSF is. But we charge for this service. It's a service that we charge for. Now we are trying to reduce our cost, but farmers are dying a death of 1,000 cuts, so to say. We've seen astronomical inflation rise, which they feel. However, the price of fruit on the field has not followed that. And so farmers are the ones that are absorbing this cost. So let's go to the numbers. In 2022, we recycled 300 acres of mulch, of ground contact film, primarily mulch. We were pretty happy with that. That was the year we applied for the grant, and we were very happy with 300 acres. Ben and his team did the processing that year. 2023, we did 2,000. So we went from 300 to 2,000. Ben and his team did about half the year. My team did about the other half. At this time, once again, we go back to that model of flipping iron and our success. When we recognize the right equipment, we buy it to be able to implement the best practices. So we bought the prototype line, and we also used grant funding to commission Ben and his team to build us the final line, which is being done right now. So what is the results for 2024? Well, to date, in 2024, we have done 7,500 acres of bed contact film. So we've gone from 3,000 last year to more than double so far this year. And what will we do? We're projected to surpass 10,000. So in 2 years, we feel like because of this team, we have gone from 0 acres of ground contact mulch to over 10,000 acres. Now, some of those are repeat acres. We talked about fumigation and also freeze cloth. A lot of times, if you put fumigation down, you're going to put another layer of plastic down always, because there's going to be some sort of mulch that goes in with it. But really a high success rate, over 10,000 acres. So, Ben, he had his cliffhanger. Did we just give up? Well, we didn't give up. We had success. So have we solved it? Are we ready to move forward? Are we ready to say, hey, let's go out and have some drinks, we're done? Well, no, because we still have some problems in this industry. There's some major challenges. There's a challenge that we are extremely reliant on foreign countries. Now, this is my woe is me point of my presentation, and I'll be brief about it. But all of these members here, as great as they are partners, if all of a sudden tomorrow export buyers say, we don't want your ground contact plastic, or some sort of change happens where there's a ban to ship it, or whatever the case is, and we can no longer export, these three keep going on with their company, and I'm laughed out of the markets. Because we are the ones that said, we'll export this, we'll recycle it. So we go from 10,000 to 0 in one act of we can't ship it out. We go from 10,000 acres to 10,000 acres being thrown back in the landfill. Now, hopefully, there's a little more sympathy for me in the market, but I won't cry about it. Obviously, I'm not starving. I could use a little, a little starving. So yeah, we're exporting 100%, and that is our current demand. When we look at the unresolved issue, we talked about 30,000. We resolved maybe 10,000 of it. We still have quite a bit more to go, and that's just strawberries. That's not watermelons, that's not peppers, that's not tomatoes, and that's just the West Coast, and that's just in California. Not even talking about Arizona and other places, Florida. So there's 6 options. I heard this at the Plastics Recycling Convention. 6 options to do with plastic. You can reuse it. Not really practical in ground contact plastic. You can mechanically recycle it domestically. You can advanced recycle it, which is domestically. You can mechanically export it for recycling. And you can incinerate it, and you can throw it away. So what option is the best? Well, that's what we're asking you. That's what we're asking the industry. What do you want to see done with your mulch? We're already having great success in mechanically recycling it via export. That probably won't go away anytime soon. However, what options here are most attractive? What do you guys want to be known for? Landfill rates keep going up. The cost keeps going up. The one thing that flipping iron has set itself apart with is our costs have decreased by 33% since we started this process. So we need some help. These are examples of different consortiums that exist. Some of them you may recognize. Some of them have talked today, the ACRC, PPI, APRC, Sea Grant. But we're saying that this problem needs all of us to come together. Right now, we have this collaboration between all these individuals. Do you see your company here? Can we add your company to this collaboration? Can you help us to find some domestic recycling options that are going to be able to help us with ground contact plastics? Ben, myself, James, Jazmine, we're all ready to talk about it. Yeah, we need to change the way that we look at mulch. West Coast is one example. It's its own unique problems. Florida will be its unique problems. Wherever we go, we'll have its unique problems. But we believe that with the best practices, the right equipment, reducing logistics, and more importantly, the right team, that we can solve that problem. We're Flipping Iron. If you have any questions, I would love to field them or check out our website.
And we'll open it up to questions for all of the panel. Does anyone have any questions specifically for Theron first?
Hi, Theron. Kevin DeWitt with PDO Technologies. You said advanced mechanical recycling in one of your 6 avenues. What did you mean by that? That confuses me.
Yeah, I think it might have been a little bit of a typo there. I think it was advanced or mechanical. I don't think there's advanced mechanical recycling. Okay. So we're talking advanced pyrolysis, things like that. Okay. But yeah, it was just a typo or oversight.
Okay, thanks.
It confused me too for a second because I stumbled across it.
Thanks.
Hey, Mark Hudson with the ACRC. You showed a picture of the rolls, I guess, coming off, or the mega binder, and then the bales after they've been processed. I don't know whether you look at it this way, but I'm just curious, if you were to put that from a truckload quantity perspective, I'm just trying to get in my head like your improvement in terms of freight efficiency. How many pounds of plastic, excluding organic waste, would be in those rolls on a truckload? Let's say a 52-foot van trailer versus the bales coming out, or is there some metric or some way that you guys are looking at the improvement in terms of bulk density before and after cleaning?
Yeah, I think Ben and I both can answer this. I'll take a little bit of a stab at it. A lot of it is water and mud that sticks to it. If you have sandy soil versus clay soil, more material is going to stick to it if it's clay. But really, when you look at the mulch coming off of the field, when you mega binder it, it's probably closer to that 40% yield plastic and 60% yield dirt, water, organics. Once we run it through our processing line, depending on what we're trying to get off of there, if we're trying to get off of dry dirt, it's great, knocks off a lot of it. If it's clay soil, that's what actually the next iteration of the mulch processing line is actually going to be twice as long for it to sit in that trommel and process longer, because it takes longer for it to dry and let that clay soil go. But we've had results anywhere from 50 to 60%. So we raise it from 40 up to 50, and at top end 60.
Specifically for truckload quantities, because again, it's about logistics often for making this work. Mega rolls, you'll top out axle weights anywhere in the U.S. unless you've got like Washington can do 100K, but that's on doubles. But for a 53-foot dry van, you'll run out of axle weight before you'll run out of space. And once it's baled, one of the side benefits of those uniform strips that Theron talked about, which is really the only new. It's really more of like a operational change, not so much. Everyone's got guillotines in their recycling factory for handling, especially post-industrial rolls. That's not new. But winding it back into a roll in the field, which again you can only do at that one time when it's laid out in a row, and then cutting it with a knife instead of a granulator lets us get those uniform strips like you would see if you're handling post-industrial plastic. And one of the besides making it flow through a trommel, when we got that junky trommel, the previous owner, whoever it was, had basically covered the outside in chicken wire because they couldn't get the mulch to stay in those big holes, right? Well, now that we've got the longer strips, we can use a large sizing, which lets us shed a lot more plant material and biological material, but not lose the plastic, because the strips are a uniform size and relatively big. But finally, when it goes into the baler, it makes crazy bales because there's like no trapped anything in there, and it's a crack up when sometimes you look at them in a container. There's just a little row of bales, and most of it's just air in the container because we can't ship any more because the truckers can't handle it on their axle weights.
Hi, Leonard Benfelt with eFactor 3 here. When you're exporting this material, do you have a grasp on what kind of, recycled products that material goes into, and in what countries?
Well, I would say that eFactor 3 would probably be the advanced mechanical recyclers. They're pretty advanced. You guys are awesome. It goes into a commoditized pellet that's blended, generally speaking. So I know that there are applications for final products, going direct into a finished product in it. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on with that down in Mexico with mulch, but the stuff that we're selling, Theron's team is selling, is going into a pellet that will get told into something else.
And yeah, if you can talk to Ted Kaiser, Doc 7, he'll answer that. Sorry. Just want to throw Ted out there. I think Ted actually had a question up here too. Yeah, and go from the very back to the very front.
Well, first, I think Ben's answer was pretty accurate. It's generally going into a pellet that can go into multiple applications, but it's usually being blended. So if it's going into a film product, it's for sure being blended, because you can't use ground film to make new film, at least not at a high percentage. And then some of it's going into other applications for plastic furniture and decking and things like that, plastic lumber. The question I had, which I probably should know the answer since I talk to you guys almost every day, what is the, you mentioned about the kind of phase 2 of the trommel project. What is the phase 2? Is it anything different in the process?
So I mean, the processing line, the reason why we bought it is because it was successful and it was scalable, and it's been great. Basically, the next phase of it is better parts. We wear out parts very fast, being an old machine. And more versatility in transporting. The guillotine itself is 15 feet tall, 16, and so when you put it on a trailer, it's too tall, and then laying it down, it's like a 3-man operation with an expensive forklift. So a lot of it is being able to mobilize it quicker. California has 3 main strawberry growing areas in Oxnard, Santa Maria, and Watsonville. And our goal is eventually, James said, we'll have regional processing lines that probably won't move, but right now, due to cost, we had to keep them moving. And so we will mobilize that equipment from one place to the other. So mobility and less wear is really the big thing. And then the longer trommel to knock off more material.
Yeah, I always make Theron or Jazmine caveat it, like that was a Junkyard Wars prototype that we flogged for years. We didn't know this was going to work. We just scrapped out some equipment. Like it's embarrassing that it's even painted blue, but we ended up getting it to go longer.
Theron, this question's for you.
All right.
After you get done doing a job,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's 1 acre, 50 acres, whatever, do you utilize that same system of transporting the plastic directly from the field to the shipper or to the port, should I say?
Yeah. So for mulch film, specifically the bed contact film, yeah.
Specifically mulch.
So right now, the Mega Binder allows us to, we set up our operation. So right now we're working in Oxnard, and we actually rented a facility in Oxnard to be able to have that processing line. And so we take the plastic off of the farmer's field and take it to that central location. We had been using Driscoll's cooler for a while, and in Watsonville we might be using a landfill, but we use centralized locations to take the unprocessed mulch, process it, bale it, and then from that location, the trucks show up and we ship it on. That answer your question, Brad?
It sure did.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you. And I just want to finish with a reflection that it's a question I've been getting from a couple of stakeholders here, which is, do you think this is going to work? And I reflect back to 2011 when some mines from Monterey County, they contracted a firm in San Jose, and they asked them to basically write a market report of plastic films in Monterey County. And they asked people and stakeholders to come to Monterey County and invest. And during that time, there was also sort of the creation of advanced recycling. So they thought this is going to be the solution. And a lot of it failed at that time. And maybe all of those stakeholders walked out thinking, oh, we didn't achieve what we wanted. But I think on the contrary, what makes us all of this and where we're at now a little different is that we've taken lessons learned from the past and from the past stakeholders. And one of the things that you notice from this talk is that there was all these shout outs, right? Oh, Adolfo and Gerald and part of that, I think it's because it kind of ties back to the theme of the collaboration that the team has done with everyone, bringing in all of the stakeholders from across the supply chain. So with that, I just want to say thank you. And I also want to thank the next generation we have with us. Today is her last day in our internship, Jazmine, who was our intern, and so we appreciate all of you for allowing us to be here. Kudos to our collaborators, but also thank you guys for coming in and being part of this. This conference is so helpful, and we can't just reinstate how important it was to have this space. So thank you all very much, and of course you have contacts to continue the conversation, and we'll be around. Oh, and one last thing too. Sorry. They said, be careful when you give the microphone to Jazmine, and that's never a lie. But I also want to say that we do try to be really being able to deliver the message, and I want to thank Globally You and with Aaron Science and Alina, who have been working on translating all of this talks, and so that way we can share it with our Spanish-speaking growers across the state. Thank you to the Commission for allowing that. So thank you all very much.
I have one more question, sorry. So this is Z-Ling, I'm with Spay Polymer. We are a potential mulch processor, maybe for you guys. I just want to ask, what are the biggest obstacles that preventing you from selling them domestically? I'm pretty sure that before exporting them, you have already done some effort trying to have a domestic solution.
I think we could all three have an answer to this one, so I'll take it. I'll take first shot at it. We really think that that's a question we want to ask each one of you guys, is what's the biggest obstacles for us selling it? Because we have no we'll sell to anybody. You know, whoever wants this material, you can have it. You want to come pick it up, I'll give you a truckload of it. You want to buy a truckload, not a problem. I mean, obviously, we know that the problems with mulch, if you've never ran mulch or you never recycled mulch, it's dirty, it's thin, it's been degraded by the sun. It's usually black, which can't go into a lot of products, and it can't go back into mulch. Let's not be naive that think like this material can go right back into mulch. It has to go into another product. So that's where manufacturers have a problem with it. So really, that's a question that you would want to maybe reach out to I think you want to reach out to one of the manufacturers, C&G, there's a few of them, others here. Viaflex, Ginagar, ask them what would inhibit you from taking or prevent you from taking this product back, because if you can recycle it, we can get it to where it's at, and if you can sell it back to them, that's a great question for them.
And the question is obstacles to recycling it domestically? Yeah, a lot of it too, it's not very glamorous, but it's like inbound logistics are challenging. In the U.S.'s infrastructure for mechanical recycling is pretty heavy up in the Rust Belt. Like a lot of people would be interested in this. You know, you get a phone call, like, where are you? I'm in Ohio. Okay, well, that's probably not going to work. So, and then, you know, competing against the economics of shipping it overseas based on a bunch of empty containers, you know, going that way, it's pretty challenging to make a value proposition otherwise until you find an end state for the material.
This is a bit of a sidetrack, but I think that the beauty of this solution is that what we're doing, although it's dedicated to one specific channel, this export channel, I think that everything that we're doing with this plastic, the mechanical retrieval, the processing, none of that, you know, all of that could lead to moving that plastic into other channels, whether it's domestic mechanical recycling or advanced recycling, you know, whatever, you know, the other channels may be. We think this process, you know, gets that material ready for those other potential channels. Anything else? All right. I think we're at time.